Well, let's take a look first of all at the political environment in the country. Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan saying yesterday that it was too early to declare whether or not he will contest in the election due by next April. To what extent is that political environment impacting market activity at the moment?
Hi, Alishia. I would say that the politics in Nigeria right now isn't directly impacting on business. There have been speculations as to whether President Goodluck Jonathan will run or not. We think that, look, that decision for him is probably a bit early. There's still, 6 months to go before we start to think probably of an election. And I think that for President Goodluck Jonathan, there's quite a lot for him to achieve in terms of convincing Nigerians that the remaining 9 months of his government will be beneficial to them in the long run. The business itself is ignoring a lot of the politics because we spent the first 3 months of 2010 trying to decide on whether there was a president or not, and all the brouhaha around late President Musa Yar'Adua. I think there's a bit of sigh of relief now that that is gone. Business is trying to focus on delivering growth rather than focusing more on the politics. However, this is my personal call. I think that the president will take a decision, and it will take that decision in time for the PDP primaries, which we expect will happen within the next 3 months. At that point, it becomes clear to everyone where the direction for the Nigerian market is.
Because at the moment, things are looking pretty mixed at this stage. So how exactly are you playing the game right now, Femi, where things are so tentative at this stage of the game?
Alishia, I've said to investors, I think in the last 6 months, 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, that the Nigerian equity market, the Nigerian market generally, the economy, is going to be a little directionless for the next three months. I don't see any major information coming out, both from the corporate and from the government sectors, to significantly drive economic activity. I believe that what we're going to see is choppy trading all across board. The money markets would continue to look for direction, driven largely by government flows. The capital markets as well will be looking for corporate results to help investors determine where to allocate their capital to at the moment. Neither of those is going to be shocking, or neither of those is going to produce any earth-breaking information to drive markets either way. So my take is that we'll continue to see calm money markets and even calmer equity markets trading either slightly lower or at best flat for the third quarter of 2010.
In the meantime, let's take a look at just two sectors that are sitting on either side of this continuum. On the positive side, the brewery sector index recorded the most appreciation on Friday's session, up over 1.5% on that front. What are you making of that space at the moment?
The brewers are quite an interesting bunch. I did have a chat with some senior people from East African breweries last week, and the impression you get is that Nigeria still has a lot of catch-up to do in terms of consumption per capita from a brewery point of view, which is very, very good for the breweries. The World Cup is also going on, even though Nigeria hasn't really blown the lights out. But during this period, there's a lot more growth in numbers for the brewery sector. It's also the rainy season, which means people spend a bit more time indoors, which also is positive for the brewery sector. So it's quite an interesting sector to be playing in right now. I imagine that the likes of Nigerian breweries, Guinness, international breweries would continue to see stronger numbers from a per hectoliter point of view, and that will drive the performance of that sector. Yeah. So of all the sectors in Nigeria, I think I'll be definitely overweight breweries right now. Even though they've done very well for 2010, I think there's still some gas behind the brewery sector.
Well, certainly the major driver on Friday's performance was Guinness, so with an appreciation of 5% clocking in there. In the meantime, the banking sector index was the least performing sector, with a loss of just over 1% having come through there. Of course, when it comes to the banking arena, we all know that, it's the market market is simply awaiting the formation or the signing of the asset management company bill, and that actually taking effect before any real positions are taken here, right?
Alishia, in addition to that, what I've said to people is, the way we value companies in Nigeria and general valuation methodology is that Nigerian banks have been valued over the last 5 to 10 years on an aggressive growth trajectory. It's an abnormal growth rate, and those growth rates have to moderate. I think we're at the point where growth rates are moderating. The market's beginning to reduce that G in our financial models to actually bring it back to trend line. I would say trend line for the Nigerian banking space is between 15 and 20%, even at the most optimistic, which is key in the way you in the way you value those banks, and I think that will continue to drive the banking sector performance going forward. In addition to that, a number of the banks, as we all know, have gone through extremely difficult periods. Banks like AfriBank have started to show signs of life, but what I say is that when you're coming from a very low base, it's probably easy to shoot the lights out. But what I will be looking out for is second, third quarter numbers from the strong banks. That would give us an indication of where the actually economic activity is growing from. When you look at the strong banks and the sort of growth we've seen in their numbers, then that tells you clearly that growth in the Nigerian banking sector is moderating significantly, and that should start to impact on our valuations.
Well, Access Bank, with the loss of 5%, was the major driver of the negative performance in the banking sector index on Friday. But backing that overall trend, as I had mentioned earlier, was Sterling Bank. It came in as amongst the top performers, gaining 4.25%, largely on the back of the fact that it had received shareholder approval for a capital raising initiative. What's sentiment like around this bank and its ability to actually bring in strategic investors at this stage?
That bank is small, nimble, and it's got great management. I think that's the only reason why Sterling Bank today is not in the Sanusi ICU, as we call it, in the CBN's ICU. Management has been good. Management has had foresight. They've taken risks within parameters that they have significant control over. And I think that the market is beginning to reward Sterling Bank for that. However, my challenge for Sterling Bank is, from a branding point of view, it's not exactly the most recognizable brand in the Nigerian banking space. I think that banks like Sterling ideally should be looking to drive some level of consolidation in the banking space and increase their footprint across the country. That's what I would be advising Sterling Bank if I was sitting as an advisor to them, to say you should be looking at some form of consolidation, picking up a few banks or other banks that are weak but with sound footprints. Use that as a basis for launching yourself as a national brand, and then you can start to look at a strong growth trajectory. But I'm not sure capital is the main solution for those banks to break in.